What's up, Samurai? We are back in some more Trove to the Trove, and today we're going to be focusing on the mysticism profession that is coming to Trove, I would assume, in December. Don't quote me on that. It might end up coming out next year. Who knows? I'd say fingers crossed, but at the same time, nobody really cares about this update. You'll see why. So we'll have another video that's going to focus on the martial arts profession because we're actually getting 2 professions added with this update. Today, we're going to be focusing on mysticism. And I want you guys to keep in mind that this is on the test server, so a lot of this is subject to change. Usually, this is finalized because I've rarely ever seen the devs go back on their decisions. Even if they end up getting met with a huge load of backlash, they rarely will just stop it in its tracks and cancel the update, like the Trove tax update that nobody asked for. So anyways, there's going to end up being this NPC, this crafting table, and then this other crafting table. All of these are going to end up having 3 different functions, which we'll get into. So first, let's focus on the NPC, which allows you to buy the crafting tables so you can throw them in a club world. You won't be able to actually get this merchant in your club world though, so I don't know, it's kind of hit or miss, like we kind of need him in our club worlds. But you'll notice there is mana being added to the game. You know how we have energy on our characters? Well, now we finally have mana. Now, to make this not complicated for you guys, mana in Trove is literally just another resource. It's just for crafting. That's it. So, wild Trovian mana, you can see we can buy 10 of these per day based on the daily reset. I'm going to buy a couple of these right here, and you'll see very soon that it's going to stop because I'm at capacity. So you can only carry 1,000 mana at the start. You can increase that with mana maximizers, of which you can buy these every weekly reset. You can buy 5 of them, in fact, and every one of them will end up increasing your mana carrying capacity by 100. So as a free-to-play, if my math is correct, I could have done this wrong. Basically, you can increase your mana to 100,000. It would take 200 weeks to get it all free to play to 100,000, which would be 46 months. So a couple years. Oh, I love this game and the math that the devs clearly don't put into it. Now, that said, you don't need to get your mana to 100,000, and obviously this is all in favor of, drumroll please, the cash shop. Yes, you can see all of these cash shop boxes right here, right now. These boxes contain ingredients and mana to further the research of the mysticism profession. I wouldn't care so much, except that, frankly speaking, the profession itself seems useless at the moment. So hopefully they tweak it before it goes live. I'll leave feedback for you guys on all of that and why we all think it's garbage in a moment. There's going to end up being this box pack and then this box pack, which ends up containing 1 golden box, which gives you a guaranteed rare, which I assume is going to be for mounts and costumes and stuff that we don't currently have live on the test server. We'll see though. I can't buy any of these boxes on the test server because it's not, they should rename it. It shouldn't be called PTS, public test server. It should be called server that goes up sometimes where you can't actually test anything, because how are we supposed to test these stupid boxes if we can't actually get them? So needless to say, when this update goes live, I'm going to buy a bunch of these boxes, unbox them in a video so that we can kind of get an average cost of how much it's going to end up costing you, either cash shop or even free to play buying the credits, to get all of the items out of it and whether or not they're worthwhile. Because so many times these loot boxes are just garbage. They'll give you items that are worth like 10 cents, and then for some reason they upcharge you like 3,000 credits, which you have to spend about 20 bucks in order to get that. So anyways, moving on to the actual Orb of Mysticism itself and talking about the Trovian Mana. So you can see we've only got 1,000 at our limit, and it's going to end up costing these other resources to end up crafting this buff. So this is going to end up being a buff that will last until daily reset. Okay, which means don't craft it just before daily reset. Now, they do have a fail-safe in place where if you craft one of these buffs an hour before daily reset, it will actually carry over into the next day. But if you craft it an hour and a half before daily reset, well, then you're just out of luck. So just keep that in mind. You can only have one of these. Can you only have one of these buffs? Let's actually find this out right here because I haven't really messed with this. Yeah, you can only have one of these buffs on at a time, which is stupid because it means that you're going to constantly be wasting resources, or it would if any of these buffs were worthwhile. We'll go through the entire tree, don't worry. But essentially, as you end up crafting each of these items, you can see our mysticism skill increases by 1 per. Now, if you've never messed with the professions in Trove, it's as simple as craft 50 items to get to this tree, craft another 50 items to get here, another 50 items to get here. You cannot craft all of the items, like you can't craft 200 items in the party magician skill tree to get to the master of the mystic arts, which seems like a licensing issue because Doctor Strange. No, you have to craft 50 items in the first tree to get to the second tree, and then you gotta craft 50 items in here in order to get to the next tree, and so on and so forth. You have to progress through it in a linear fashion like that. And you'll notice that a lot of these items are going to end up slowly increasing in the amount of mana that they end up costing, so that's something that you have to balance. Now, the other thing is that these are going to be the primary buffs that you'll probably be focusing on early on, which is going to be allows wild Trovian mana to be collected by defeating enemies in the Fey Forest Adventure World biomes. As far as I know, it doesn't matter what uber difficulty we're in or anything like that. So we just got 1 mana off of that enemy. Another 1 mana off of that enemy. Let's see if we can end up getting anything higher than that off of just an average bunch of little enemies here. And then we'll end up going into a higher Uber world and see if that actually makes a difference. Okay, so it seems like I actually, there I did get 3 wild Trovian mana off of an enemy, and enemies inside dungeons do count. The average does seem to be 1 though. Let's see what happens when we end up completing the dungeon. And whether or not, I wonder if summoned minions give you mana. All right, let's see. So we complete the dungeon and no, nothing. So it's not about the dungeon anymore unless it's out of the chest. Nope. Okay, let's see. U11 enemies. So it gave me 2 Trovian mana because I killed 2 enemies in rapid succession. So it just labeled it as 2 instead of 1. So it seems like it's probably just the same. The numbers are still astronomically bad, but I just wanted to show you guys an example. So crafting all the way up to the final level, you're gonna have to be very specific about the way that you do this, because for whatever reason, all of these items are not created equal in their pricing. So these items all give 100, they take 100 mana. Sorry, not give 100 mana. They take 100 mana as well as a bunch of other resources. But then as soon as we get to the passive buffs, like the jump one, that's 250 mana per. Now, if you're trying to get through this skill tree as quickly as possible, you're going to want to craft all the items on the left side because they're going to end up being the cheapest all the way until you max out. At which point, it's going to cost you 5,000 mana to get to tier 2, and then from tier 2 to 3 it's 37,500, and then after that it's 100,000, and to fully max out after that it's 150,000 mana. Oh boy. All right, let's do some more maths here, because assuming that we end up getting getting the ones out of here daily, the total amount of mana that you would need to max out the profession is 292,500. Okay, so if you were just getting the daily reset, you would need to be playing Trove for 2.5 days just to get it off of this guy. Now, granted, you can still farm it off of enemies, but seeing that we're getting an average of 1 to 4 off of an enemy, let's say we're being super duper generous, that would mean that you would have to kill 73,125 total enemies if they were dropping 4 each time. Otherwise, essentially, you could use this to soften the blow, but you're gonna have to kill like hundreds of thousands of enemies. If you are planning on cash shopping your way through this, or just using credit pouches to buy these, they will give you a different mana resource that won't dip into your 1,000 limit. So don't worry about that. It's not like these will end up going bad or anything like that. And at the end of the day, the real bottom line is, okay, well, considering how difficult it is to actually max this out, or how time gated it is to max this out, is it worthwhile? I don't think so, not at the current state. Let's start going through the buffs so that you guys can agree with me. So first of all, these 3 buffs are going to end up being the biome itself for that given week. But then there's going to end up being the jump plus, which increases your jump by 10 and 5%. So 5% of your total amount of jumps is going to increase on top of the 10. Not worth it because nobody needs jump anymore. And then this one, Icebound, prevents slipping when on ice. Now, if you're just farming ice biome, that could be okay. You know, it's not really awful or anything. And it's a cheap enough resource to get. But considering that your #1 priority is going to be advancing through the profession, you're probably going to want to try and keep these as your active buffs 24/7. And you want to save more mana in the long run. So you're not even going to be able to take advantage of these buffs for a very, very long time, or at least I'm not going to. And even then, I don't know if I would ever want to, but we'll move on. So Vampire's Grace grants a short duration of slow fall when jumping in Adventure Worlds, Delves, and the Hub. Now that's funny because the Cosmic Dragon had this effect and then they removed it after I had a video talking about how good that buff would end up being on, say, like Neon Ninja and stuff. And yeah, it seems like they just removed it and threw it into here for whatever reason. I don't even know why it's called Vampire's Grace. Do they think vampires fly or jump high or something? Anyway, flask capacity increased by 3, keeping in mind you can only have 1 of these active at a time. Regeneration increases health regen by 5k and 5%. Health regen is useless when enemies will just one-shot you at the end game anyway. I don't know if they're overhauling health regen as well, because health regen is just god-awful in this game. It just never worked well. Chocolate Affinity blocks slow and increases health regen when in chocolate, so you don't slow down in chocolate. I'd like to see this work for all effects, you know, like honey and delves and stuff like that. That could end up being kind of nice, but even so, I don't know, it just wouldn't be very good. And then there's Aura Vision, periodically reveals nearby NPCs through walls. So the Shadow Hunter's passive ability, Shadow Mark, which works on the Shadow Hunter because he can shoot through walls. I don't know what character in this entire game would ever want to have this ability to see enemies through walls. Like, that's just why. And then in the higher tier, there's Strength of Beast. So it increases your physical damage by 1% or mana damage by 1%. Passive damage, whatever. I mean, I guess at the end of it, all of these are going to end up being the most worthwhile. Meteor Fragments or Primordial Flame. Guess which resource is harder to get? And then finally, for maxing out the skill tree, you're gonna have Firewalker, so transforms lava beneath your feet into walkable ground, like a certain legendary bird that we already have access to and is way cheaper and easily accessible comparatively to maxing out the Mysticism. And it also costs Fiery Feathers, which you would actively have to farm out Forbidden Spires. Then there's the Water Walker, so transforms water beneath your feet into walkable ground. Again, what the heck? And then buff stability. So stability, if you guys don't know, is enemies knocking you back. The higher your stability, the less they knock you back. So this could be nice just for the sake of knockback shouldn't even be in this video game. But why would you ever want to take this stat over just passive damage, you know? And even then, at the end of the day, we still don't need the passive damage. That's kind of my main issue with a lot of what's been going on with Trove's updates lately, is they keep on adding all of these things that essentially end up making us way, way stronger than the strongest enemies in the game in favor of what? Delves? Because that's the only thing that really upscales that high that it would be worthwhile to have these stats. Because as of right now, Adventure Worlds just aren't that strong. So I'm still, you know, clinging on to the copium monster that all of this is in favor of a update that is going to be adding some end game biomes, and more than likely that's going to end up being next year. All right, so let's move on from that and go to the alchemical table, because this is going to take a little bit to explain. Essentially, this is the crystallized mana that you get out of the cash shop boxes can be converted into normal Trovian mana. Okay, so just keeping that in mind, it's going to end up being how you don't waste the mana that you get out of the boxes. And then there's going to be the Alchemist Insight. So when equipped in the auto use slot, meaning this would replace your food items, allows Trovians the insight required to transform a currently active buff into a potion recipe at the alchemical lab. So if we go to our potions, for example, so defeating enemies in Kandoria, right? Let's see. So we've got, you know what? No, let's refresh our Fey one. I don't know why I even refreshed that, because I'm an idiot, that's why. And then let's grab one of these bad boys right here, because it's best to just show you by example. So then I right click it and I equip it. It goes into my food item hotbar. You can see that this item will disappear after a minute, so we gotta act fast. We go into the potion tab and it's not here. Oh, there it is. Okay, so it is still kind of broken and just not very intuitive. So we've got this one right here. And then if I consume it now, where did that go? So I can't craft another one, but are my potions? Okay, there. Jesus. Okay. Whew. Okay, so you get it, right? You guys understand it. You just gotta have the weird bug equipped to your auto use slot, and then when you end up interacting with the table, you'll be able to craft this, which automatically unlocks the recipe in here, but it doesn't do it in real time. So you gotta leave the crafting table and come back. Now, why would you ever want to craft the potion, especially considering how much more mana it costs? Well, the potions are tradable. They also give you a little bit of mastery. It's not really worthwhile. The potions themselves, I don't know anyone who would ever want to get them, but let me just give you guys a little example right here if I can end up crafting one of them. So I craft this sucker right here, and now it ends up going into my actual inventory, right? And it just looks strange. It's not even a potion icon, which is weird, but we can throw it onto the player market. And now that it's on the player market, it's actually going to end up doing two different things. One is, in order to prevent market flipping, the devs are funny because nobody would ever want to flip these potions because of how useless they are. In order to prevent market flipping, they make it so that the first potion in the stack will automatically consume. So if I sell just this one item, it means that anybody who buys it, just gulp, they're automatically going to end up retaining the buff. If you sell two potions on the market, the first one will automatically be consumed by the player, but the second one will go into their inventory. It's a stupid system. I don't know why they even have it. It seems like a lot of effort for no reason. This might make some people mad. I think that if they're going to end up implementing a system like that, they should have it so that it does that for mounts and allies and stuff, where they automatically get consumed by the player account that is buying the item. Like other MMOs do that. It would make a lot more sense rather than these stupid consumable potions that are a temporary item that nobody's going to bother trading. The big difference in the potions is that when you log out, your total time will not expire. It's not tied to a daily reset. It just gives you a certain amount of time. So let me actually activate this right here. And then if we check the effects, you can see we've got 4 hours worth of it, right? And then if I end up, grabbing another buff from the Mysticism, we can see that we can actually have both of them active at the same time. Now, I don't know whether or not that means there would ever be a reason to have the active buff stack. I mean, I guess it would be good for the 1%, because then you could have 1% damage buff from your potion, 1% damage buff from the Mysticism. I don't know if there's any implication that would end up making this worthwhile, but essentially the potions are just going to end up giving all the same buffs that the Mysticism does. However, it is going to be very, very expensive for your mana and not really worth the cost. Anyways, the collectibles tab right here isn't available on the test server, which is what I assume is the rare items out of the reagent boxes. And more so than that, will probably cost a significant amount of mana. Maybe it's different class costumes. Who knows? Either way, that pretty much is going to end up covering the profession. I know that it was a bit of a lengthier video. I'll try my best to cut it down as far as time is concerned. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's not bad, but it's not great at the same time. In combination with the martial arts profession, it might be useful. The only thing that's kind of nice about it is that you get to have these buffs running in the background, but none of them are particularly good. And the potions especially, I don't know what person on this earth would ever want the potions other than like maybe because, oh, you could have the jump potion at the same time that you also have ice slipping or non-ice slipping. I don't know. I think that these buffs could have been, you know, the devs could spend a little bit more time making them something more reasonable for us considering the cost investment. But let's be real, the devs don't play this game, so they don't know how useless not slipping on ice or 10 jump is, or how useless these are. What I would like to see is how about we get, you know, since we already have one that marks enemies through walls like the Shadowhunter's passive ability of Shadow Mark, how about we get some other classes' passive abilities? I would love to see Lava Walker from the Draco, where as soon as you touch lava, it ends up giving you a movement speed buff. How about stuff like that? Something that gives you a function that would be like, ooh, so if I could have Lava Walker on my Neon Ninja, you're telling me I would be like super fast, you know, something like that. Or make it even something more inventive where it's like, oh, so long as you touch ice, you've got a damage buff. That would make a lot more sense and kind of, you know, split people apart in adventure worlds and force them to be in specific biomes based on their specific buffs. This is just ideas off of the top of my head that I just came up with right now as well. I'm not necessarily saying that it would be a better solution. It's just right now, this is kind of bad, but that's my 2 cents towards it. Sound off in the comments of what you guys think, and we'll have another video talking about the martial arts profession, which is a little bit more interesting. As for today, smash like on your way out, buy the merch you want, support the channel, and yeah, sign on and stay epic, everybody.